guys, welcome back to our next video. Today, I don't know what we're doing.
I've decided I'm going to read you a fairy tale. So I got a book of fairy tales. It's like, I'll just open it up at a random one. And I did, and I read that one, and I just thought it was crazy.
You're reading me a book.
Yeah.
It's like you're in my audio book.
Here we go. This is The Three Little Gnomes in the Forest.
Oh,
There was a man whose wife died, and a woman whose husband died. And the man had a daughter, and the woman also had a daughter. The girls knew each other, and one day took a walk together. They went to the woman's house, and she said to the man's daughter, "Listen, tell your father I want to marry him. Then you shall wash yourself in milk every morning, and drink wine, while my daughter will wash herself in water and drink water." The maiden went home and told her father what the woman had said. The man responded, "What shall I do? Marriage is both a joy and torture." Finally, since he could not reach a decision, he took off a boot and said, "Take this boot, it's got a hole in the sole. Carry it up the loft, hang it on a big nail, and pour water into it. If it holds water, I'll get married again, but if it leaks, I won't."
What a stupid way to make a decision.
The maiden did as she was told, but the water drew the hole together, and the boot became full to the brim. The daughter informed her father how everything turned out. Then he climbed up into the loft to see for himself, and when he saw she was right, soon after the wedding took place. On the day after the wedding, when the two girls got up, the man's daughter had milk to wash herself and wine to drink, while the woman's daughter had water to wash herself and water to drink. On the second morning, both girls had water to wash themselves and water to drink. On the third morning, the man's daughter had water to wash herself and water to drink, while the woman's daughter had milk to wash herself and wine to drink.
So they're equal. Equality.
And that's the way it remained.
Isn't that a good thing? Who wants to drink wine in the morning? I mean,
No, but she
if you're drinking wine
she
in
was
the morning.
She was promised to wash in milk and drink wine.
Who wants to be washed in milk? See, if it was me, I'd be like, thank you. I like washing myself
Water
in
is
water,
fine.
and I like drinking water. Thank you.
The woman became her stepdaughter's most bitter enemy and tried to think of ways to make it worse for her from one day to the next. Moreover, she was envious because her stepdaughter was beautiful and lovely and her own daughter was ugly and gruesome. Once, when it was winter, the woman made a dress out of paper, called her stepdaughter to her and said, "Now, put on this dress, go into the forest and fetch me a basket of strawberries. I've got a craving for them." "Good Lord," the girl said, "strawberries don't grow in winter. The ground is frozen and everything's covered with snow. Besides, why do you want me to go in a paper dress? It's so cold outside that my breath will freeze. The wind will blow right through the dress and the thorns will tear it off my body. You have some nerve talking back to me." Should I use a stepmother voice?
Yeah.
You have
nerve talking back to me.
Good. Get going! Is that better?
Yeah.
Should I do maybe like an accent? Get going. No.
Get going.
Get going, and don't show your face around here again until you have the basket filled with strawberries. Then she gave her a little piece of hard bread and said, "You can use this as food for the day." All the while she thought, "She'll starve and freeze to death out there, and I won't ever have to lay eyes on her again." Exactly like that. The maiden was obedient, so she put on the paper dress and went out with the little basket. When she reached the forest, she saw a small cottage and 3 little gnomes were looking out the window. She wished them a good day and knocked politely at the door.
Just because somebody looks out their window does not mean that you can go up to their door and knock it.
No.
I'd be like, fuck off, I was looking at you from afar.
"Come in," they cried out. She entered the room and sat down on the bench near the stove, since she wanted to warm herself and eat her breakfast. The 3 gnomes said, "Give us some too."
What is this bitch going into people's houses
Just
and
eating
going
her own
like,
food?
I want to be seated near the stove because I need to heat up and eat my food.
"Gladly," she replied. She divided the bread in 2 and gave them half. "What are you doing out here in the forest during the winter, walking about in such a little dress?" they asked. "Oh," she answered, "I'm supposed to look for strawberries." I like how the O is first.
Yeah.
And I'm not supposed to return home until I've gathered a basketful. After she had eaten her bread, they gave her a broom and said, Sweep the snow away from the back door. Once she was outside, the three gnomes began talking amongst themselves. What should we give her for being so polite and kind and sharing her bread with us?
And freaking so obedient that she would sweep their back door.
She shall become more and more beautiful each day that passes. This is my gift, said the first one. Each time she utters a word, gold pieces shall fall out of her mouth. This is my gift.
That's not a
said
gift.
the second.
You know, like when you go to an arcade and the tickets come out? It'd just be like that, but just constantly as you're talking. So like,
A king shall come and take her for his wife.
ooh.
This is my gift, said the third. The maiden did as the gnomes had asked and swept the snow away from the back of the house. And what do you think she found? There were lots of ripe, dark red strawberries shooting out of the ground. In her joy, she filled her basket with them. Then she thanked the little men by shaking hands with each of them and ran home to her stepmother. As the maiden entered the house and said, "Good evening," a piece of gold fell right out of her mouth. Then she explained what had happened to her in the forest, and with each word she uttered, gold pieces fell out of her mouth until soon the entire room was covered with gold. Just look at how arrogant she is, her stepmother.
What the fuck?
The way she throws money around. But secretly the stepsister was envious and wanted to go into the forest and look for strawberries too. "No, no, my dear little daughter," her mother said. "It's too cold and you could freeze to death." However, her daughter gave her no peace and finally her mother had to yield. She sewed her a magnificent fur coat to wear and gave her bread and butter and cake to take with her. The maiden went into the forest and headed straight for the little cottage. The three gnomes were looking out the window once again, but she did not greet them. Instead, she tramped right into the house, sat down by the stove, and began eating her cake without even glancing at them or saying good day.
I'm really confused.
You see a house and you're like, there.
And then you're like,
yeah, exactly.
I need to eat my food.
"Give us some," the little men cried out.
Not even, can I please have some bread? It's not your bread.
Yeah, but
No.
she's in the house.
I know, but still.
But she answered, "It's not even enough for me, so how can you expect me to give you anything?" When she had finished eating, they said to her, "Here's a broom. Go outside and sweep around the back door so it's clean," as if it hadn't already been just done.
If I came into your house and you're like, well, sweep the back door, I'd be like, I'm going. Bye.
"Do your own sweeping," she responded. "I'm not your maid." When she saw that they were not going to give her anything, she went out the door and the three gnomes began talking amongst themselves. What should we give her for being so naughty and having such a wicked and greedy heart that makes her so stingy? She shall grow up uglier with
Oh my
each day that
God.
passes. This is my gift, said the
These
first one.
gnomes are the problem.
Each time she utters a word, a toad shall spring
Oh.
out of her mouth. This will be my gift, said the second. She will die a miserable death. This will be my gift, said the third. Just not for sweeping.
Yeah, what the hell?
The maiden looked for strawberries outside, and when she could not find any, she went home in a bad mood. As she opened her mouth to tell her mother what had happened in the forest, a toad sprang out of her mouth with each word she uttered, causing everyone to be repulsed by her.
The mum's just like, the fuck? I don't need strawberries. I just made that up to fuck around with your other sister.
Now the stepmother was even more disturbed than before and could only think of how she might be able to hurt her husband's daughter. Finally, she took a kettle, put it on the fire and boiled some yarn in it. When the yarn was boiled, she hung it on the poor maiden's shoulders, gave her an axe and ordered her to go to the forest river, where she was to chop a hole and rinse the yarn. Since she was so obedient, the maiden went to the river and began chopping the hole in the ice.
Why did she boil the yarn?
I don't
what
know.
the fuck is going on?
While she was in the middle of chopping the hole, a splendid coach with a king inside came driving by. The coach stopped and the king asked, "Who are you, my child, and what are you doing here?"
Why do you have to say my child?
He said my
Instead
child.
Instead of like my lady.
I
or
know.
like, or dear woman.
"I'm a poor maiden and I'm rinsing yarn." Fair enough.
Whatever.
The king felt sorry for her.
I'm rinsing yarn because my mom told me and I'm obedient. I'm really, really obedient. I'm a really obedient girl.
The king felt sorry for her, and when he saw how beautiful she was, he said, "Would you like to ride with me in my coach?" "Fuck no," she replied.
I was like, oh.
"Oh yes, with all my heart," she replied, for she was glad to get as far away as possible from her mother and sister. So she climbed into the coach and drove away with the king. And when they got to the castle, the wedding was celebrated with great pomp.
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 It's pumped, man.
And this would not have happened were it not for the gifts of the three gnomes.
The fuck's with this chick? Honestly, I feel like I'd be the mother in the story. Like, why are you so freaking annoying?
After a year had passed, The young queen gave birth to a son, and when the stepmother heard about her great fortune, because she's not wandering, she's just like, oh, she died, I guess. And when the stepmother heard about her great fortune, she went to the castle with her daughter. But when the king left the castle and no one else was there, the evil woman seized the queen by her head and the daughter grabbing her feet. They lifted her from her bed and threw her right out the window into the river flowing by the castle. Then the ugly daughter lay down in the bed and the old woman pulled the covers
Do
over
they have to
her
call
head.
it that? Then the ugly daughter.
I know.
Instead of like the woman's daughter.
Yeah. When the king came back home and wanted to speak to his wife, the old woman cried out, "Hush, hush! Now's not the time. She's in a terrible sweat. You must let her rest today." The king did not suspect any mischief and came again
Idiot.
the next day. When he began talking with his wife, and she answered, there were toads springing out of her mouth with each word she uttered. Not the pieces of gold that usually fell out. So that's
I
still
wonder
happening.
why they married. I wonder. He's like, oh, every time she talks, gold comes out of her mouth. Will you marry me? No, they loved each other.
He can't even recognise her voice. So he asked what all this meant, and the old woman said, this came from the terrible sweating and would soon go away. During the night, however, a kitchen boy saw a duck swimming through the drain.
I just don't understand.
I like that it says however as well, like that somehow relates to the love.
Yeah. Conversely.
It said, King, what are you doing? Are you awake or might you be sleeping? When the boy did not answer, the duck said, and are all my guests now sound asleep? The kitchen boy answered, yes, indeed. You can't hear a peep. Then she asked again, how about that baby of mine? He replied, oh, he's sleeping and doing just fine.
So she turned into a duck.
Yeah.
Why is the kitchen boy like not like, who the fuck are you?
Finally, the duck assumed the shape of the queen, went upstairs and nursed the baby, plumping up his little bed, covered him, and returned to the drain, where she swam away as a duck. This happened the next night too, and on the third night, she said to the kitchen boy, go and tell the king to take his sword and swing it 3 times over my head on the threshold. The threshold of what? I've got no idea. The kitchen boy ran and told the king, who came with his sword and swung it 3 times over the ghost. So she's a ghost, even though she's
Who's
like a
the
weird
ghost?
duck. The duck. So she obviously died going out the window.
But she's a duck.
I know.
And she like obviously can interact with real life because she nursed the baby. Like, whereas this is ghost milk that she's been breastfeeding him.
Yeah. Spirit duck milk.
Ew.
At the third time, his wife appeared before him, alive and as well as ever before. Now I'm alive again. Now the king was exceedingly happy, but he kept the queen hidden in a room until Sunday. This is the first mention of any day, so we don't even know.
Yeah.
We don't even...
What does that mean? Like when you mention a measurement of time or a date?
Give it a context.
Yeah.
Until Sunday, when their child was to be baptised. When he was baptised, the king said, what does a person deserve who drags someone out of his bed and throws him into the water? The scoundrel deserves nothing better than to be put into a barrel studded with nails on the inside, said the old woman. And then he should be rolled down the hill into the water. You have pronounced your own sentence, said the king. He ordered a barrel like that to be fetched, and the old woman and her daughter were put inside. The lid was hammered on, and the barrel was rolled down the hill into the river. And that's the end.
It ended too quickly.
It's called The 3 Gnomes in the Forest.
But
They're
it
never
doesn't
mentioned
really,
again. Like,
yeah, they're never mentioned again. Aren't there supposed to be morals to the story? The
Like-
moral to the story is don't be freaking stupid. Like, don't be stupid and you'll be fine. Doesn't it suck how it's like, it's always the evil stepmother.
I know.
Like, you know, it
And
makes
it's all like-
women look bad.
yeah, exactly. And how ugliness is like the bad.
When I have children, before I get them like these fat fairy tale books, I'm gonna quickly just skim through and be like, does it make any sense? Or like, is this what I should be teaching my child? It was fun though. Like, it's, if I was a kid, I'd keep reading it just because I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what is going on? Yeah, well, thanks for that. It was fun. I actually like being read to.
I'm glad you enjoyed that. Well, I think that concludes everything for today. Yeah, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.